First contact. The Sentinel Outpost Krell 7 hung in the emptiness of space like a forgotten ornament, its dull metal hull reflecting the distant light of an aging star. Inside the dimly lit command center, Systems Officer Talek yawned as he monitored the sensor array. This was the most remote posting in the galactic hegemony, a punishment detail where careers came to die. Another thrilling day protecting the Empire from absolutely nothing. Talek muttered, his four eyes blinking asynchronously as he reached for his stimulant drink. Then the console chimed, a soft, almost apologetic sound that seemed embarrassed to disturb the monotony. Talek's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair widened in surprise. "That's odd," he whispered, tapping the screen with a three-fingered hand. The sensor readings made no sense. Something was out there, moving at the edge of their detection grid. But the velocity was impossible, faster than any known hegemony vessel, yet producing no recognizable engine signature. No heat bloom, no radiation trail, just presence. "Commander Ven," Talek called, his voice cracking. "You need to see this." Commander Laris Ven was the picture of hegemony military excellence, tall with iridescent scales that shifted from deep blue to purple depending on the light. 6 decorations adorned her uniform, remnants of a once promising career before she questioned a high admiral's tactics during the Rigelian campaign. Now she commanded this forgotten outpost with 40 crew members and outdated equipment. "What is it, officer?" she asked, her voice perpetually calm, a trait that had once marked her for leadership and now served only to mask her resignation. "Unknown contact, bearing 227.5 by 118.3, Talek reported. "Speed is..." "Commander, the system says it's moving at approximately 0.75 light speed in real space." Ven's posture stiffened. "That's impossible." "Yes, Commander. And there's something else." Talek's voice dropped. "It's changing course, directly toward us." On the screen, the anomaly appeared as nothing more than a blip against the void. No shape, no details, just a point of data that defied explanation. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Ven ordered, leaning over the console, "and activate the quantum scanner array." "The quantum scanners have been offline for maintenance since." "Get them online. Now." As the crew scrambled to comply, Ven stared at the blip. 20 years in the hegemony fleet, and she had never seen anything like this. Every known species, every recognized technology had been cataloged, analyzed, and ranked according to threat level. The hegemony had ruled uncontested for 9,000 years. Their technological superiority was absolute, or so they had believed. The quantum scanners hummed to life, their energy signature creating ripples in the station's power grid. Lights dimmed momentarily before stabilizing. "Scanners active," Talek reported. "Targeting unknown vessel." The moment the scanning beam touched the object, everything changed. The outpost's systems flickered, displays glitched, and for 3 heartbeats, even gravity faltered. Talek and 2 other officers floated briefly from their seats before crashing back down. "We're being probed," the security officer shouted. "Something's accessing our..." Every screen in the command center suddenly displayed the same message. Ven's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. "Terminate scanning sequence. Shields to maximum. Alert hegemony command." "Communications are down," reported the comms officer, frantically working her console. "Whatever they did, we're cut off." Ven considered her options. The outpost had minimal weapons, enough to deter smugglers and pirates, not to engage an unknown entity with technology that could disable their systems with apparent ease. "They said communication follows," Ven noted. "Let's wait and see what they want." The blip on the screen grew larger as the vessel approached. Now the visual sensors could capture its shape, sleek, dark, with no visible propulsion system. It moved like a predator through water, elegant and purposeful. "It's beautiful," Talek whispered. The vessel slowed and came to a stop 5,000 kilometers from the outpost, close enough to be a clear presence, far enough to show restraint. Their screens flickered again, and a new message appeared. "They've accessed our language databases," the security officer said, his voice tight with alarm. "They know who we are." Ven straightened her uniform. "Open a channel." "But, Commander, they could have destroyed us already if that was their intention." "Open a channel." The main screen cleared, and for the first time in hegemony history, Commander Luris Ven gazed upon a being that was not in any database, not recognized by any protocol, not classified in any threat assessment. The figure appeared remarkably bipedal, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head perched atop a slender torso. Its skin was a soft tan color, lacking scales or exoskeleton. 2 eyes, only 2, gazed back at her with an unsettling intelligence. The mouth moved, and a voice emerged from the outpost's speakers, synthesized but clear. "Greetings, Commander of Sentinel Outpost Krell 7. I am Captain Elara Hayes of the Earth vessel Harbinger. We come in peace, though I suspect our arrival has caused some concern." Ven found her voice. "You've breached hegemony space, disabled our communications, and accessed our systems without permission. Concern is an understatement, Captain Hayes." The human's face changed slightly. What Ven would later learn was a smile. "Fair point, Commander. But consider our perspective. We've observed your empire for decades. Your first response to unknown vessels is to scan, identify weaknesses, and if determined to be inferior, subjugate. We merely preempted that sequence." "Earth," Ven repeated, the word unfamiliar. "Your world is not in our records." "No," Hayes agreed. "It wouldn't be. Though we have met before, a long time ago." A chill ran through Ven's body. "Explain." 300 years ago, by your time measurement, a hegemony fleet entered our solar system. They demanded our submission. We refused. The human captain's expression hardened. The battle was costly for both sides. Your leaders decided we weren't worth the effort and retreated. Then they erased all records of our existence. Ven's mind raced. Such actions would violate dozens of hegemony protocols. But she had seen enough in her years of service to know that the Empire's shining exterior often concealed shadows. "Why return now?" she asked. "Because you're expanding again. Your borders have crept closer to our region of space. We decided it was time to reintroduce ourselves, on our terms." Talek leaned close to Ven. "Commander, we need to alert High Command. This could be the prelude to an invasion." Hayes's voice came through clearly. "Your officer is right to be concerned, Commander Ven. But if invasion was our goal, this conversation wouldn't be happening." The implication struck Ven like a physical blow. They could hear everything being said on the command deck. "What do you want?" Ven asked directly. "Recognition, respect, and assurance that the hegemony will acknowledge Earth's sovereignty and our right to exist unmolested by your empire." Ven measured her words carefully. "I don't have the authority to make such guarantees." "We know," Hayes replied. "That's why we're restoring your communications now. Tell your superiors what you've seen. Tell them that humanity has emerged from isolation. Tell them we remember our history, even if they've tried to forget it." The screens flickered once more, and the outpost's systems returned to normal. Communications, sensors, everything functioning at optimal levels. "We'll be watching, Commander Ven," Hayes said. "Your leaders have 3 days to respond before we make our presence known throughout the Empire." The transmission ended. On the sensor display, the human vessel, the Harbinger, began to move, accelerating at an impossible rate until it vanished from their detectors. Ven stood motionless for several moments, processing what had occurred. Then, with practiced calm, she turned to her communications officer. "Open a priority channel to Hegemony High Command. Authorization Ven, Epsilon 93. Channel open, Commander." Ven took a deep breath. "This is Commander Luris Ven of Sentinel Outpost Krell 7. We have made contact with an unknown species identifying themselves as humans from the planet Earth. Their technology exceeds our current capabilities. They claim prior conflict with the hegemony and seek diplomatic recognition. Request immediate instruction. As she waited for a response, Ven stared at the stars visible through the command center's viewport. In her 20 years of service, she had been taught that the hegemony's dominion was absolute, its technological superiority unquestionable. Now, in the span of an hour, those certainties had evaporated. Something ancient and powerful had awakened in the darkness beyond their borders, and it remembered. The silence from high command stretched for almost an hour before the response came, not from a mid-level coordinator as protocol dictated, but from High Admiral Zex himself, the supreme military commander of the entire hegemony. Outpost Krell 7, maintain position and full alert status. Share no information about this encounter with your crew. Await the arrival of the battlecruiser Indomitable. Zex out. Ven exchanged glances with Talek, who had heard the transmission. They know, Talek whispered. They know exactly who these humans are. Yes, Ven replied, a cold clarity settling over her. And they're terrified. Outside, the stars continued their silent vigil, indifferent to the empires that rose and fell beneath their eternal gaze, and somewhere among them, the Harbinger carried its message back to the waiting human fleet. The silent fleet. The Imperial Palace on Hegemony Prime glittered like a jewel against the planet's azure landscape. Inside the strategic command chamber, the atmosphere was anything but beautiful. High Admiral Zex stood before the Sovereign Council, his usually immaculate uniform showing signs of hasty dressing, his scales a dull gray from stress. Impossible, Supreme Counselor Drav hissed. All 6 of his eyes narrowed in disbelief. The Terran problem was resolved centuries ago. Apparently not. Excellency, Zex replied, projecting the visual recording from Outpost Krell 7 onto the chamber's holographic display. The human Captain Hayes appeared before them, her alien features causing several counselors to flinch visibly. Their technology has advanced considerably, Zex continued. The vessel detected by Commander Ven demonstrated propulsion capabilities that outmatch our fastest warships by a factor of 3. Their ability to penetrate our systems and communications protocols suggests defensive matrices far beyond our current understanding. One ship, Counselor Mila interjected, her voice sharp with skepticism. A single vessel appears, makes theatric threats, and disappears. This could be an elaborate ruse, perhaps a new frontier coalition tactic to divert our resources. Zex's expression hardened. It is not one ship anymore, Counselor. He gestured, and the display changed to show a galactic map with the hegemony's territory outlined in blue. Red dots began to appear, 1, then 5. Captain, Chen said, Fleet Admiral Winters is requesting an update. Hayes nodded, and a moment later, the weathered face of Fleet Admiral Cassandra Winters appeared on the main screen. At 78, Winters was a living legend, the architect of humanity's silent expansion and technological revolution. Captain Hayes, the Admiral greeted her. I understand first contact went according to protocol. Yes, Admiral. Commander Ven of Outpost Krell 7 reacted exactly as our psychological models predicted. Curiosity tempering fear, willingness to communicate rather than immediately escalate. Good. She may prove valuable in what's to come, Winters replied. The full diplomatic flotilla is preparing to depart Earth now. I'll be leading personally. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Isn't that a significant risk, Admiral? If the hegemony decides on a military response, then I should be there to face it. Winters interrupted firmly. I was a child during the invasion, Captain. I still remember watching their ships darken the sky over Chicago. I remember the fear, the devastation they caused before we drove them back. If we're finally stepping out of the shadows, I won't do it hiding behind my officers. Hayes nodded respectfully. Understood, Admiral. Continue the reconnaissance pattern, Winters ordered. In 24 hours, we move to Phase 2. As the transmission ended, Hayes turned back to her crew. You heard the Admiral. Let's make sure the hegemony never forgets this day. Back in the Hegemony Council chamber, Admiral Zex stood before the galactic map, his voice solemn as he recounted history that had been deliberately erased. 306 years ago, our exploratory fleets discovered a system with a single habitable planet. Initial scans showed a primitive civilization, early spaceflight capabilities, limited to their own system, with no faster-than-light technology. Following standard protocol for Class 3 civilizations, a subjugation fleet was dispatched. He paused, his scales shifting to a darker hue, a sign of deep discomfort among his species. The humans, he continued, refused our demands for submission. We expected token resistance, easily crushed. We were mistaken. Zex brought up ancient footage, grainy, damaged, but clear enough to show massive hegemony warships being torn apart by weapons that seemed to materialize directly within their hulls. They had developed phase shift technology that allowed their weapons to bypass our shields entirely. When we adapted, they shifted tactics, using their planet's magnetic field to generate pulses that disabled our targeting systems. For every solution we found, they created 2 new problems. But we have phase shift defenses now. Counselor Mela interrupted. Surely our technology has advanced beyond. Our phase shift defenses, Zex cut in sharply, are based on technology we salvaged from their destroyed vessels 3 centuries ago. We've spent generations reverse engineering and improving upon what they already had when we first encountered them. The implication hung heavily in the air. The campaign lasted 62 days, Zex continued. We lost 17 capital ships and over 40,000 personnel. In the end, the High Command ordered a withdrawal, declaring the planet's resources insufficient to justify continued investment of military assets. A convenient euphemism for defeat, the Supreme Counselor remarked dryly. Yes, Excellency, Zex admitted. And afterward, to preserve the myth of hegemony invincibility, all records of Earth and its people were purged from our archives. Their system was marked as a navigation hazard due to unstable stellar activity, and we simply pretended they never existed. Until now, Counselor Thren said. Until now, Zex agreed. But these are not the same humans we faced centuries ago. Their technological development appears to have continued at an exponential rate. The fact that they can appear anywhere in our territory without detection suggests capabilities far beyond anything we currently possess. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 9 millennia, the hegemony had expanded without meaningful opposition, absorbing or destroying hundreds of less advanced civilizations. The notion that they might now face a technologically superior force was almost incomprehensible. Options, the Supreme Counselor finally demanded. We have 3, Excellency, Zex replied promptly. First, immediate military mobilization. Commit our entire fleet to hunting down and destroying these human vessels before they can coordinate. Second, diplomatic engagement. Send envoys to establish communication and determine their intentions. Third, isolationist defense. Withdraw our forces to core worlds, strengthen our defenses, and prepare for potential conflict. And your recommendation, Admiral? Zex straightened to his full height. The first option would fail, Excellency. We cannot fight what we cannot find or track. The third option merely delays the inevitable. I recommend the second path. Diplomatic engagement, but from a position of prepared strength. We should open communications while simultaneously readying our forces. Before the Supreme Counselor could respond, a junior officer rushed into the chamber, a shocking breach of protocol that drew gasps from several counselors. Excellencies, forgive the interruption, the officer said breathlessly, but we're receiving a direct transmission from Earth. On screen, the Supreme Counselor ordered. The holographic display shifted to show an elderly human female in a crisp, dark uniform adorned with subtle insignia. Her hair was silver, her face lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and penetrating. Greetings, leaders of the galactic hegemony, she began, speaking flawless standard hegemony language. I am Fleet Admiral Cassandra Winters of the United Earth Defense Force. 300 years ago, your empire attempted to conquer our world. You failed, retreated, and chose to forget we existed. We, however, did not forget you. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. In the centuries since our encounter, humanity has expanded. We have colonized 17 star systems. We have developed technologies you cannot yet comprehend. And we have prepared for the day when our paths would cross again. Admiral Winters leaned forward slightly, her expression softening just a fraction. That day has come, but it need not lead to conflict. I am personally leading a diplomatic flotilla to Hegemony Prime. We will arrive in 3 standard days. Prepare your representatives to meet us in good faith, and perhaps we can forge a new understanding between our civilizations. Her expression hardened again. Choose wisely. Our vessels currently positioned throughout your territory are merely observers. They will take no hostile action unless provoked. But make no mistake, if diplomacy fails, if you choose aggression, you will face the full technological might of humanity. And this time, there will be nowhere for you to retreat. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. After several long moments, the Supreme Counselor turned to Admiral Zex. It seems, Admiral, that the humans have chosen diplomatic engagement for us. Zex nodded gravely. So it would appear, Excellency. Prepare a suitable reception, the Supreme Counselor ordered. And Admiral, ensure our defensive grid is at maximum readiness. If this is a prelude to invasion, I want us prepared. As the council dispersed with new urgency, Admiral Zex lingered, studying the map where dozens of human vessels still blinked in hegemony space. 3 centuries ago, he had been a junior weapons officer during the Earth campaign, witnessing firsthand the ingenuity and ferocity of human resistance. Now, as the highest military authority in the Empire, he found himself facing the same adversary. But this time, they held every advantage. The humans had not just survived in isolation. They had thrived, advanced, and now returned to a galaxy that had tried to erase them from memory. And somewhere deep in his strategic mind, Admiral Zex suspected that the hegemony's 9,000-year reign of unchallenged dominance was approaching its end. The reckoning. Commander Laris Ven stood at rigid attention as High Admiral Zex inspected the bridge of Outpost Krell 7. The battlecruiser Indomitable had arrived 6 hours after the human vessel's departure, bringing not just reinforcements, but the highest military authority in the hegemony. You did well, Commander, Zex said finally, his voice carrying to her alone. Your handling of first contact was exemplary. Ven maintained her composure, though confusion rippled through her. She had expected censure, perhaps even demotion for failing to detain the human vessel. Thank you, Admiral, though I'm not certain I understand what's happening. Zex studied her for a moment. Walk with me, Commander. They moved to a private observation deck overlooking the stars. Once the door sealed behind them, Zex's formal posture relaxed slightly. What do you know about Earth, Commander Ven? Only what the human captain told me, sir, that we encountered them centuries ago, attempted subjugation, and then erased all records of their existence. Zex's scales shifted to a contemplative blue. Accurate, if simplified. 300 years ago, I was a weapons officer aboard the dreadnought Invincible, flagship of the subjugation fleet. I was young, proud, certain of our technological superiority. He moved to the viewport, gazing at the distant stars. Earth was not like other worlds we had conquered. Their technology was primitive by our standards. They had barely reached their own moon. But their adaptability. He shook his head in remembered wonder. When our first attacks destroyed their major military installations, we expected surrender. Instead, they dispersed, regrouped, and within days had developed countermeasures to our weapons. How is that possible? Ven asked. Their society was different, decentralized, diverse, competitive. While the hegemony advances through careful, controlled research over generations, the humans innovated in moments of crisis. Their scientists worked independently, pursuing multiple solutions simultaneously. Where we saw established patterns, they saw possibilities. Zex turned to face her directly. "We lost the campaign, Commander. The official records claim we withdrew because Earth wasn't worth the resource expenditure, but the truth is simpler. We couldn't defeat them without committing to total planetary destruction, which even the hegemony considered excessive for a standard subjugation." Then processed this revelation, her vision of the infallible hegemony cracking further. And now they've returned, with technology that outmatches ours. Yes, the humans didn't just survive, they thrived. While we believed them contained to their home system, they were expanding, developing, preparing. Zex's voice held a note of reluctant admiration. "In 3 centuries, they've achieved what took us millennia." "Why tell me this, Admiral?" "Because you're now part of what happens next," Zex replied. "The human diplomatic flotilla will arrive at Hegemony Prime in 2 days. I've recommended your presence at the negotiations." Ven couldn't hide her surprise. "Me? I'm just an outpost commander." "You're the first hegemony officer to successfully communicate with humans in 3 centuries. More importantly, Captain Hayes spoke to you honestly. That makes you valuable." Zex's eyes narrowed. "And I suspect we'll need every advantage in the coming negotiations." Captain Ilara Hayes stood on the command deck of the diplomatic vessel Concordia as it led the human flotilla toward Hegemony Prime. Unlike the stealth configuration of the Harbinger, the Concordia was designed to impress. A gleaming white vessel stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull inscribed with the history of human achievement in delicate gold script. "Quite the statement piece," remarked Ambassador Thorne, a tall, elegantly dressed diplomat who had joined her at the viewport. "Subtle. We are not." Hayes smiled slightly. "Subtlety had its place during our silent expansion. Now we need to make an impression." "Oh, we're making one," Thorne replied, bringing up a holographic display showing dozens of hegemony news broadcasts, all featuring grainy footage of human vessels, breathless commentary, and thinly veiled panic. Their media networks are in overdrive. The public hasn't been told the full truth yet, but rumors are spreading faster than the censors can contain them. And they're military. Mobilizing, but cautiously. They've positioned 3 battle groups to intercept us if necessary, but they're maintaining a respectful distance. Hayes nodded, satisfied. "Good. They're taking us seriously without being provocative." The door to the command deck slid open, and Fleet Admiral Winters entered. Despite her age, she moved with decisive energy, her presence immediately commanding attention. "Captain, Ambassador," she greeted them. "We've received the official diplomatic protocols from Hegemony Prime. They're planning quite the reception. Honor guards, ceremonial fleet formations, the full imperial treatment. Designed to impress us with their might and magnificence," Thorne observed dryly. "Of course," Winters agreed. "Just as our flotilla is designed to impress them with our technological advancement. It's the dance of diplomacy, Ambassador. We all know the steps." She joined them at the viewport, watching as the stars streaked by. The Concordia and its escort vessels traveled at speeds that would have been considered impossible by hegemony physics, another deliberate demonstration of human capability. "They've requested our technological specifications," Winters continued. "Engine capabilities, weapons systems, fleet numbers, standard procedure for receiving unknown vessels, or so they claim." "And our response?" Hayes asked. Winters' smile was thin. "We've provided them with specifications for human technology circa 2150, roughly equivalent to what they encountered during the invasion. Let them believe that's our starting point." Ambassador Thorne raised an eyebrow. "A deception, Admiral." "A negotiating tactic, Ambassador," Winters corrected. "We need them cautious but not desperate. History has shown that the hegemony becomes dangerous when cornered." Hayes turned from the viewport, Speaking of history, the archival packages you requested have been prepared. Footage from the invasion, survivors' testimonies, documentation of the aftermath, all authenticated and translated into Hegemony Standard. Winters nodded grimly. Excellent. They've worked so hard to forget their failure that I intend to remind them in excruciating detail. Not out of vengeance, but necessity. They must understand that humanity remembers, and that we will never allow such an attempt again. On Hegemony Prime, Supreme Counselor Drav stood in the Ancestral Hall, a vast chamber where holographic statues of past rulers watched with eternal vigilance. He often came here to think, to connect with the 9,000-year legacy he was tasked with preserving. Today, that legacy felt suddenly fragile. "I thought I might find you here," came a voice from the entrance. Counselor Thren, the eldest member of the Sovereign Council, approached slowly, his hovering mobility platform gliding silently across the polished floor. Seeking wisdom from the ancients, Thren asked, his voice gentle with understanding. "Seeking anything that might help us navigate what's coming," Drav admitted. In 9 millennia, the hegemony has never faced a technologically superior power. Thren's aging features arranged themselves in what passed for a smile among their species. Perhaps that's precisely our problem. We'd forgotten how to negotiate as equals rather than conquerors. You think we should simply acquiesce to whatever demands these humans make?" Drav asked sharply. "No," Thren replied calmly. "I think we should approach them with the wisdom to recognize a potential ally rather than the fear that sees only a threat." Their admiral spoke of diplomacy, not conquest. That suggests an openness we should encourage. Drav gestured to a nearby console, bringing up the latest intelligence. Their diplomatic flotilla consists of 17 vessels, led by a ship larger than anything